Thank you, Sophie. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my second Plunet Summit. I came to the first Plunet Summit, I think it was 2008 or 2009. Very small in comparison, a long time ago. Anyway, thank you for the introduction. Yes, I do have an espresso here. I also had an aspirin. Has a lot to do with that dark, humid cave that we were dancing in last night. I learned a new word from Eugenia Echave last night, musty, a musty cave. Great music. Didn't understand any of the German, but very good. So my topic today is leveraging Plunet to turbocharge your screen ISO certification. Now, it's a bit of a dry topic. ISO, or in the United States, ISO. It's a bit of a dry topic. I mean, a lot of people stay away from certification simply because they think it's too dry. And I must say I was extremely resistant before we got our first certification. But then I was extremely resistant about getting Plunet too. So clearly, younger people in our organization dragged me forwards in making some of these decisions. But before I begin, I wanted to just say an amazing presentation so far in the conference. I've learned some fascinating things, new words from New Jersey, a tech-turnship. I love it. I'm just wondering how to translate that into Spanish. Tech-turnship. If anyone can help me with that. Also from New Jersey, I love it. Plunet has a smell. Trying to work out what that smell is yet, but yes, it has a smell. And I also love the one that Plunet is not a luxury. It's commonly perceived to be expensive, which is very interesting. It's not a luxury. I definitely do not think that Plunet is a luxury. But I think a lot of people who don't have it would think, I can't afford it. You know, I can't afford Gucci, I can't afford Plunet. It's not really comparable. Some luxuries are, whimsical preferences, and others are your engine to turbocharge your growth. But I like that one. Plunet is not a luxury. And I also was really impressed to see at the very, very beginning of the summit, Sophie, who doesn't age, by the way, between one summit and the next, had a picture of the world with these little dotted lines from Cordoba, which is where I live in Argentina. It's really cool. I don't have to say Cordoba, Argentina, because nobody's thinking of Cordoba, Spain, or Cordoba, Alaska, or Cordoba in Colombia. Cordoba, Argentina, 3 speakers from Cordoba, Argentina at the event. So Cordoba is in the house. And at least 100 Plunet licenses in Cordoba City. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Anyway, so let's get started. I hope you've all had aspirin and coffee and you're ready to go. It's not easy to talk the night after the party, so bear with me, and especially on a topic like this. But I'll just jump into it. Before I do, anyone here have ISO certification? I'm going to hunt down the people that have not raised their hands. Or a different type of certification, like Canadian or ASTM. So everybody. What about, well, almost everybody. There's a couple of people who I'm not going to single out who don't have it. Now, anyone got 2 ISO certifications? Wow. Which 2? Okay, translation and quality management. Anyone got 2 other certifications? What about 3 certifications? Oh my gosh, what's the 3rd one? Okay. 4 certifications. Right. I'm really afraid of ISO auditors. I have a habit of organizing business trips when audits come up, so I'm not around. Because they ask you for things, you know, show me this, show me that, provide proof, documentation. And it can be terrifying as you struggle to think, where is that on the server? Where is that information that the auditor wants? And it's like when you need to go to the bathroom and you can't, like on a plane, you know, and the light is on and you kind of get up and the steward says, sit down, put on your mask. You know, that's what it's like when the auditor is saying to you that they want, because they play the devil's advocate and they try and expose you and ask you about parts of your process. And before Plunet, information was in so many different places. I was literally terrified the first time we got our first audit. So the first audit we had was in 2011, and there was an 8-year gap before all the others. And that's because it was awful. It was awful and was hard, and we almost didn't get it, and there was all sorts of recommendations. Recommendations are like slaps, you know, slaps of things you need to improve and do better from the auditor. So it took us 8 years. But something happened in the middle that somehow facilitated going from one certification and holding on to it, you know, like a baby, holding on to your certification, to suddenly getting 4 certifications in a 2-year period, which seems to be like every time I wanted to speak to someone about something important at the company, I would say, oh, I'm in an audit. I'm sorry. I'm going into an audit. I've got an audit tomorrow. I've just had an audit, so I'm brain dead. And that was in 2017, we got finally, after an extended period of procrastination on my part, we finally got Plunet up and running. And it took us so long. It took me so long. I'll put that in a better way. And then when we got it up and running, we only used it for some of our clients because we wanted to test it. Like as Shani said, living together. You know, we'll live together with some of the clients on Plunet, which was ridiculous. For about 3 months, it was cohabiting with a clunky old in-house system that we had developed on our own before we finally went full in January 2018. Never, ever looked back. And even the person who didn't even log in to Plunet for the first month came to love it. And when our certification for ISO 9001-2015 came up for renewal, the audit was smooth because all the information was on Plunet. And by that time, of course, we had also had several recertifications, and the auditors had come to understand a little bit more about the translation industry because we were the first company in our area to get certified. So auditors literally had no idea about what a translation company did. They were used to auditing factories or or other businesses, more industrial. So for example, when we got 17100, it seemed to me like 2/3 of the content was copy-paste from 9001. It was just so much easier to get that certification after having achieved 9001. And with having all the information on Plunet, it really just took the terror out of the audit process. No more looking up to see if the light was on in the plane and you could go to the bathroom or not. And then quickly, there we go. We also, more recently, well, it was 2 years ago now, got the CAN CGSB standard, which is from Canada, and the ASTM standard, which is promoted by the Association of Language Companies in the United States. It would be disrespectful on my part to the people who did the audits to say they were easy, because as I said, I'll try and avoid being there, but they got easier. Each one was easier than the one before, and I'm absolutely convinced that Plunet was behind that. And for us, it was extremely enriching as a small business operating out of South America, mostly at that time, to certify our processes, because it's like developing muscles that you didn't even know you had. I mean, some of the processes when we read the standard before we got certified involved us developing a process that didn't exist before that. And it really has become our body and soul in terms of how we do things at the business. So, above and beyond ISO, Plunet, is our essential real-time workflow solution. We have 4 offices in Argentina, which is where I live, in Peru, which is the second largest office. Well, I say office, they're actually teams, because we had to close the offices during the pandemic. Vietnam and Ukraine. So it's quite amazing for me to see everything happening in real time from these 4 different locations around the world. I struggled to imagine how we could manage the business at this point without Plunet. I mean, obviously we would have to use one of Plunet's competitors. But I can safely say that we have never even looked into them since we got married to Plunet. We did before, like we made a choice, an informed choice to move with Plunet, and we did look at the alternatives before we got Plunet. But once we got it, we never looked back. Yeah. So at this time, we have 60 internal licenses and 140 internal users. So it's a significant budget item for us, very significant. And from time to time, questions have been raised about, is it worth it? And we always come back with the same feedback in terms of, how would we do business without it? How would we get our ISO certifications at this point without having everything in the same place? So I just want to pause here for a second. Since I mentioned Ukraine. So we used to have an office in downtown Kiev. We had to close this office during the pandemic. And then almost all of our team, which was about 8 people at the time, it's more now, were in Kiev, like central Kiev or the neighborhoods. And very interesting. The opening of our office in Kiev and our office in Ho Chi Minh City coincided with the achievement of the ISO standards. So a lot was happening at the same time. We got the standards, we opened up these offices in East Asia. We were making plans to travel to Ukraine and to Vietnam, and then the pandemic hit. And we kind of got shut off. So once again, Plunet was an essential, real-time, constant method of communication and having up-to-date information with these far-flung locations. So I personally have not been able to go now for obvious reasons to Kiev. But I can track everybody's work there and what they're doing through Plunet. So we had to close our office in Kiev and Ho Chi Minh City and Lima and Cordoba, all of them because of the pandemic. And we're only just now beginning to reopen, not offices, but, offices that are halfway between an office and a party house. Not a dark, humid cave like last night. They do have air conditioning. But in the Ukraine, obviously, we have a different reality. And it's very interesting because if you turn on the TV, it's horrifying, destroyed houses, buildings, and schools, and so forth. War, the terrors of war. After an initial period of shock, and mental regrouping and physical regrouping, like where am I going to work from? Our Ukraine team is fully operational today. And the stories of the people in the team is very interesting. I'm working from my grandmother's farmhouse. I'm not going to turn on the camera because there are animals in the background. That would be one of the happier ends of the spectrum. Others are, I'm not going to make the call today because the air raid sirens are going. So this is 920 kilometers away from where we are now. I don't know how far Paris is, but it must be something like that. So this is not too far away. By the way, Cordoba, Argentina, has been mentioned more times at this conference than the word Paris. Sorry to the French. Anyway. That's the thing with espressos, they go cold very quickly. So the reality of our team in the Ukraine, once again, if we didn't have a workflow solution like Plunet, it would have been totally impossible to continue working. And obviously, humanitarian needs and physical safety come first. But as the war grinds on, and you come to wonder, is this going to be another 2 months, another 2 years? Is this going to be like the partition of Kashmir which was 70 years ago? Where are we heading with this? So life to a certain degree goes on, business goes on. But nevertheless, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Come on. Okay. Now we've stopped. Aha. So, on the right we have the bomb shelter where one of my team leaders goes to when the sirens sound. It's pretty creepy. This is not something from CNN. This is not propaganda. This is not what someone wants us to see. This is the bomb shelter that one of my team members goes to when it gets heavy. It looks like something out of a horror movie. And on the left, that is the neighborhood where she used to live before she decamped to her grandmother's farmhouse. So obviously this is a civilian neighborhood, that's not a military installation. So it's just amazing. So I'm overwhelmed by the commitment and bravery of these people to just continue living, buying bread, getting medicine, managing translation projects, as the case may be. So moving on, after that pause that I just felt I had to make, simply because we're just so close. I mean, I live far away, and now I kind of feel like, you know, we're one day's drive away from it all. But no. Anyway, moving on. 5 certifications in 4 locations sounds like a nightmare. I mean, how did you even do the audits? Well, the pandemic in that sense provided a benefit. Because we didn't have to fly the auditor down from Toronto to Argentina. We could just do a call. So that saved us, you know, several $1,000s of airfare, and I'm not saying the audit was any easier, it was just more affordable. The auditor is the one in Carroll. So this is what the audits look like. Oops. So the critical process, the critical factor, I would say, for the audit is that using Plunet, you can basically display the entire translation process to the auditor, and the auditor will say, well, show me your process, walk me through it step by step, show me the information of the translator, who did this, who did that. It's all there. I mean, well, as long as you put it in there, only what you put in is going to be in there, so it's up to you to do the hard work, the data entry. And particularly, ISO 17100, it's almost like Plunet is being tailored for that. It's almost like it, or it has? Yeah, it has been tailored. So Plunet is really mirroring 17100, which is the translation standard in ISO. It's interesting because I think in Europe, with the European Union, you are more, you're warmed to ISO more than in the United States. A lot of translation companies in the United States don't have ISO. Even translation companies that work in the medical sphere, it's amazing to see translation companies working with hospitals and medical device companies and healthcare providers and not have ISO. I mean, you can't even make bread in Germany if you don't have ISO, but in the United States you can. And the number one reason is that the owners of the translation companies are afraid of the perceived bureaucracy involved. You know, everything is going to get so bureaucratic, which is also coincidentally the same thing that Plunet resistors, myself included, several years ago, like to say, you know, oh, it's going to be so much bureaucracy, it's so hard to use, it's so big, it's so German. Well, you know, Plunet isn't SAP, you know, it's not something you're going to need to spend thousands of hours of consulting on and so forth. Of course, you know that because you're here. But it's amazing to see these perceptions amongst non-adopters. And for me, becoming certified was an absolute no-brainer. There's a kind of strange geopolitical thing in the translation industry where people don't really have qualms about calling someone in Dublin or Kansas. Well, maybe Kansas they do, but Dublin, I don't know, Wisconsin, Spain, you know, like Cadiz in Spain, calling them for a Japanese translation. You know, why would you call someone in Cadiz for a Japanese translation? Why would you call someone in Dublin for Swedish? Well, obviously because they work with linguists around the world, and they have a global network. But there's a kind of strange perception in the translation industry that if you're from an emerging economy, that you would not be able to manage that language in the same way. So yeah, you call someone in Dublin for Japanese, you call someone in Kansas for Swedish, but you might not call someone in Brazil for Swedish. You know, why would I go call someone in Brazil for Swedish? Well, the same reason you call someone in Dublin. So certification, I believe, is a really important way for translation and localization companies that are located around the world away from the glamorous cities like Dublin and Berlin, here with this beautiful weather and dark caves, for companies that are in far-flung locations where there may be stereotypes associated with those locations, to break out of that and say, yeah, we're just as certified as you are. And the auditors were local, but they report back to the head office in Germany. And you know, our processes are as good as anyone else's. So I feel like certification is a really good way for companies that are in emerging markets or off the beaten track, so to speak, to show their standardized processes to the world. Certainly has been that way for us. So, just a word about 17100. For example, when you have your audit, you can tag the projects as being 17100 compliant, I believe, so that you can filter them out and just show the auditor all the projects that are 17100 compliant in your system, all the resources and so forth. So it really makes it easy, makes it easier to deal with an audit. Anyway, we'll just move through this part. So really what auditors are looking for, you know, what is your process? How do you generate feedback? How do you source your work? All the different things the auditors are looking for, it's all in there. It's, as Sophie said, it's built basically to help you do the audit, amongst other things. Whereas prior to Plunet, it was like you had to go in to the audit with a filing cabinet on wheels. So I'm just going to skip through. This is the continuous improvement manager of Translation Back Office, who was not able to be here, and I'm kind of stealing her thunder because she knows so much more about this than me. This is Lisa Blasson, who's been working with me for 12 years, and there's an audio. How do I get it to work? Let's see. There you go.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa, and I worked as a continuous improvement manager for 4 years now. Actually, the continuous improvement department was created when Translation Back Office decided to introduce Plunet in our daily operation. I jump in here in Charles's presentation to illustrate in a couple of minutes what an audit was like before we had Plunet compared to nowadays. Taking the operational role of a project manager, for example, when they were audited, their desktop looked more or less like this. The evidence was scattered among all these windows. Our old and own management system, the yellow one here, inbox, separate folders on the server, templates, Excels, and more. In present days, at the time of showing evidence, we just show our inbox and Plunet. We go through different features depending on what we need to show. We go from the beginning, a quote request, for example, to the very end, including payments and also invoicing. So audits are way more organized, take less time, and this also invites to consider additional certifications, as most of the evidence for the whole business is in one place. Well, I hope this short illustration has helped. Thank you and enjoy.
Wow. That was Lisa, who is our continuous improvement manager. So what she showed there was what it was like before Plunet. You had to have all these different windows open on your computer, desperately searching for information that the auditor was asking you for. A tense silence in the room as the seconds went by until you found the information. The auditor would say, "Do you need a break?" with a really strange tone of voice. And really, almost every time we got certified and recertified before we had Plunet, we'd come back with a non-compliance about information not being readily available, or the staff members in the audit not being able to memorize exactly where things were, just under the pressure of the moment, or because things were all stored in all sorts of different locations. And that has been completely resolved by having Plunet, which is how we were able to go from 1 certification to 5 in a 2-year period.
In present.
This is us celebrating after one of the audits. So we're in Northern Europe. This is what Argentinians dress like in the middle of winter. 9 months of the year it's t-shirts, and 3 months of the year they get out the really warm clothes. So the audits involve a lot of people. You know, it's a pretty big thing, and it's a commitment on the part of your organization to invest time and money. I don't see it as bureaucracy. I don't see anything slowing us down, but I do think it is an investment. And, you know, no pain, no gain. In the same sense, I mean, when you've got if you're migrating to Plunet or migrating to a new version of Plunet, I heard some groaning yesterday about, you know, we haven't even gotten to version 8, and now you want us to jump to version 9. Well, you know, no pain, no gain. And ISO audits are like that too. So I encourage you to piggyback your certification process on Plunet. And anyone who hasn't been certified and has Plunet, anyone who hasn't been certified but currently uses Plunet, I bet your bottom dollar, without a doubt, that that company is not using Plunet properly. And they probably have a love-hate relationship with it. They probably implemented it when they were really busy and never really fully implemented it. And now they're kind of they're in a halfway house of having it and not fully using it. Because if you have Plunet, the certification is just so much easier. And as I said, especially in the United States, there are translation companies out there, even in the medical sphere, that are not ISO certified. So that's it. Questions?